Okay, how's it going, everybody? Chuck Holton here, and today we're going to be talking about answering idiots, another one of those. You know, Colonel Macgregor just provides me with so much content. I just should really send him a thank you note. So I'm going to let you know what I'm going to be talking about right away, and then I'll back up and catch up with a few things because it's been a few days since we were on. First of all, I just want to show you this claim by Colonel Macgregor on an interview he did recently. Take a look at what he said about Israel nuking, using nuclear weapons against Iran and Hezbollah. Take a listen.
Prime Minister Netanyahu asking his war cabinet for their consent for him to use nuclear weapons delivered into Iran.
Yes, I'm sure that he would unhesitatingly use that capability against Hezbollah, because Hezbollah is probably at least as well fortified and dug in as the Ukrainians were in the Donbass.
Okay, so he went on to just say that Israel is likely or looking to use an atomic weapon against both Hezbollah and Iran. And I'm going to be talking about that and why that is kind of ridiculous. Not kind of ridiculous, very ridiculous. Like most of the things that Colonel Macgregor says, he obviously has a very strong agenda, not only an anti-Israel agenda. My camera is freezing up. All right, we're going to go. My camera is freezing up, so we're going to move over here. He not only has a very strong anti-Israel agenda, anti-Ukraine agenda, pro-Russian agenda, but he's just basically been wrong about everything that I've seen him say since I even started following him before the Ukraine invasion. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. First, I want to back up and just say that I hope that you all had a great 4th of July weekend, Independence Day if you're here in the United States. I'm not in the United States now. I'm back in Panama with my lovely wife, and I got back last night. Going to be here for a couple of weeks, actually, so that's going to be great. I'm going to get a chance to sort of catch up on some things and do some good PT, get back in shape. Being on the road is hard. It's tough to, it's tough to keep up with the workouts and eat right and everything when you're eating in restaurants every day. And so I am always happy to finally get home. I'm trying to get this thing resituated here. I'm not sure what's wrong with this other camera over here. It keeps freezing up. I'm not sure why that happens, but it is what it is. We spent a good 5 days in the Pacific Northwest, went out and spoke at a 4th of July extravaganza in George, Washington, the town of George. We had a great time. It was a lot of fun. We haven't been to the States for a 4th of July in a few years, so it was a good time. So, yes, it was nice to meet some of you. Many of you came out to see us, and that was really fun. So thank you for doing that. Now, let's talk. I don't know where One Tired Mama is. She might not be awake yet because it's 11:30 on the East Coast. So it's only 8:30 in the morning. She's probably getting her kids ready or something for the day. But we've got Connie on and maybe Nathan on as moderators here today, so we should be okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this idea that Israel might be about to nuke Hezbollah or Iran. First of all, we know that Israel does have nuclear weapons. We don't know exactly how many, but it's estimated that they have about 80 to 85 nuclear weapons. That's definitely enough, for sure. Solar Independent Utility Systems is asking questions here. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. If your ex-fire chief neighbor had a 350-gallon tank of red phosphorus, would you be concerned about large explosion? No, probably not. But okay. I'm gonna not answer questions while I get through this, so I don't get too distracted by off-topic questions. So Israel has 85 nuclear weapons. We know that. Now, Iran, so far as we know, does not have a nuclear weapon yet. They have been working towards one, and but they haven't got one yet. They have said in the past that if and when they get a nuclear weapon, they will immediately use it on Tel Aviv. I'm not sure that's anything more than just talk. The Iranians are known for big talk. But there's something that I found. I saw a video recently from Peter Zeihan, who is a political analyst and a pretty good one. I mean, he's been pretty right about a lot of things. He's one of the few people that was predicting that Russia would invade Ukraine when everybody else was saying they would not. So he was right about that. And he's not been right about everything, but he recently made a video about whether or not Iran has a nuclear weapon or could get one. And I want to play you just a little piece of that. The link to the full video is on top of the video. It's superimposed on the video. So you can look that up if you want to go watch the rest of the video. But take a listen to what he had to say about Iran getting a nuclear weapon.
Supposedly, Iran has been 6 months away from having an active nuke for 25 years now. And at some point, it's not just an issue of putting up or shutting up. It's an issue of dissecting the technology that's in question and what is actually necessary. So to have a uranium explosive device, you have to do something that's called implosion, which is basically having a series of very precision milled explosive plates that surround a plutonium or uranium core and all explode in at the same time in order to compress the sphere of enriched material, which then triggers a runaway chain reaction that triggers.
So in order to avoid being whacked by YouTube for using too much of his video, even though it's fair use of his video, I'm going to stop it right there and just paraphrase the rest of what he says. That basically what he's pointing out is that in order to make a nuclear weapon, you have to, it's a very difficult thing to put together. It's not as easy as just throwing some nuclear material into a bomb. It has to be very precisely timed, very precisely machined and made, and then very precisely put together and executed in order to create nuclear fusion or fission. If they get the ability to do that, they're going to have to test it first. And if they test it, everybody's going to know. The whole world will know that they tested one and that it was successful. They would pick it up on like earthquake sensors and things like that. Once they've tested it, now they've got to make one and figure out how to deliver it. These things are large, they're heavy, and there would be this time period between when they tested a nuclear weapon And everybody then found out that they had the capability of doing it until they had the ability to deliver a nuclear weapon. And that window of time would give, according to Peter Zeihan, would give Israel the ability to do a first strike on Iran. And so Zeihan doesn't believe that Iran has the capability yet to do it. He rightly points out that Israel has been 6 months away from a nuclear weapon for the last 20, 25 years. So it's something that people have been worrying about for a long time. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't worry about it. It doesn't mean that they're not trying to do it. It just means that they have been working on that for a long time and have yet to actually successfully test a nuclear device. Now, you could try to make the argument that they wouldn't bother testing it. After all, according to Ryan Macbeth, a friend of mine who's also a pretty smart guy when it comes to these kind of things, he says that they did not test Fat Boy back in the 50s before they used it on Nagasaki. So it's theoretical that Iran could put together a nuclear weapon, or at least something they believed would work, and then use it on Tehran and see if it worked. In effect, testing it on Tehran, on Tel Aviv, testing it on Tel Aviv. But to date, they have not done anything like that. Okay? So the likelihood of Israel using a nuke against Iran would only be a direct result of Iran either using or preparing to use a nuke against Israel. And so far, Israel has not felt the need to do that. Now, in this clip, McGregor says, when asked whether or not Israel is planning to nuke Iran, he immediately goes to not Iran, but Hezbollah. He says that they are likely to use a nuke against Hezbollah, which is one of the stupidest things I've heard today. Let me just replay that clip for you if you just came on.
Prime Minister Netanyahu asking his war cabinet for their consent for him to use nuclear weapons delivered into Iran.
Yes, I'm sure that he would unhesitatingly use that capability against Hezbollah, because Hezbollah is probably at least as well fortified and dug in as the Ukrainians were in the Donbass.
Okay, so McGregor is trying to make the argument that Israel is considering using a nuclear device against Hezbollah. Now, to call that stupid would be the height of understatement. Stupid for him to believe it, stupid for him to posit that in public, and it would be even more stupid for Israel to actually try to do that. It would not affect or allow Israel to accomplish any of their goals in this war. It would not, it wouldn't work in any way, shape, or form if they were to nuke southern Lebanon. Let's just go through some of the reasons why this is stupid. And I mean, we could talk about this for a long time, but first of all, let's see. If Israel bombed Hezbollah with nukes, first of all, you would cause a massive humanitarian catastrophe. A nuke is like playing horseshoes with hand grenades. meaning it's not a precision weapon. And so if they used even a small nuclear weapon on southern Lebanon, you're guaranteed to cause massive loss of life, including civilians. You're not going to be able to remove civilians from that equation. There are still lots of civilians in southern Lebanon. There would be long-term radiation effects, which would cause lots of illnesses and then basically create a dead zone in southern Lebanon where nobody could live. And you might say, well, that would be a good idea because then Israel could be assured that Hezbollah would not occupy the area south of the Litani River. But you also have to think about the fallout, the literal fallout of a bomb like that. It could very easily, because this is a small area, it's very close to Israel's border. You bomb your next door neighbor, it's very likely that the fallout is going to get blown into your country. You're going to create radioactive fallout, massive sickness and death of your own people. Even if it didn't come into your country, that fallout could or would, without a doubt, blow across some of your other neighbors like Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and this is not going to help your relations with any of those countries. What do you think the political and diplomatic consequences would be if Israel threw a nuke at Hezbollah? Now, they've already got lots of international condemnation, but don't you think it would go a lot further than that? If Israel, because look, Israel's not going to, they wouldn't be able to clear this ahead of time with the United States. Can you imagine Netanyahu calling Joe Biden and saying, hey, we really want to nuke Lebanon. Is that okay with you guys? I mean, that's not going to happen. Because and they know that they wouldn't get permission to do that. So they would have to do it unilaterally. And if they did it unilaterally, they would be absolutely crushed under international condemnation, widespread across the globe. There would be sanctions. There might even be military action against Israel by some countries. What do you think Iran would do if Israel struck Hezbollah with a nuclear weapon? More importantly, what do you think Jordan would do? What do you think Saudi Arabia would do? Two countries that have so far only fought on the side of Israel in this conflict. They have assisted Israel so far since October 7th in shooting down missiles and drones that were heading toward Israel. Do you think that would do a lot for the Abraham Accords? No, it wouldn't. Israel would have to stand alone, and they would be absolutely crushed under international condemnation and likely retaliation. Retaliation from Iran, Hezbollah, and other state and non-state actors. It would not increase the security of Israel in any way for them to do that. They would see more war crimes charges. They would see more international law charges, violations of international law. They very likely cause a nuclear arms race in other countries around them. And what about Turkey? Now, as far as we know, Turkey does not have any. Let me just check. Turkey does not have nuclear weapons, but they do. There are United States nuclear weapons in Turkey. Not that Turkey would have use of those. But do you think Turkey and other countries would go looking for nuclear weapons if it looked like Israel had become unhinged? Now, you have to ask yourself, where in the world could McGregor have gotten these absolutely ridiculous idea other than just making it up out of thin air? I mean, that's very possible. He could have totally brought it up out of thin air. He could have just made it up. I mean, he's been known to do that. I've seen him making stuff up about Ukraine more than once. You understand, he is held up by many on the right as the expert about the war between Russia and Ukraine, but he's not been to Ukraine since this war started, or Russia for that matter. He has parroted known Russian propaganda during this war, throughout the war. And he's been very anti-Israel in this since October 7th, and has repeatedly made false claims about the state of readiness of Israeli troops, saying that the Israeli military is collapsing, that Israel is about to lose this war, that they're taking thousands and thousands of Israeli soldiers as casualties in Gaza, which is not true. Israel has been very precise and very open and transparent about their casualties. They've taken about 325 dead Israeli soldiers so far since they invaded Gaza. So, yeah, I mean, I could go back and talk a little bit about McGregor's history. McGregor has been known as a pro-Russia analyst for a long time. Even when he was active duty in the military, he was passed up for promotion because he was so unhinged about Russia. He kept saying that Russia's military capability was so much better than the United States that if Russia and the United States went to war, the U.S. would lose. And Russia would absolutely clean our clocks. That their strategy and their tactics and their technology, their equipment, was so much better than American strategy and techniques and equipment that the U.S. would lose if they went to war with this country that has a GDP the size of Texas. The United States spends $1 trillion a year on its military, and Russia spends about $65 billion, or did, it's about $80 billion now, a year on their military. Well, if the war in Ukraine has taught us anything, it's that Russian technology was not all it was cracked up to be, and their strategy has not evolved since the Second World War. Their strategy is to just try to drown their enemies in a sea of Russian soldiers' corpses by just sending wave after wave after wave of human misery at their enemies, hoping that they'll just run out of bullets. The Russians have, there's a report just came out that was leaked from the U.S. intel agencies just a few days ago that estimates that Russia's losses in Ukraine have been far worse than have been reported so far. Could be almost something like 460,000 casualties. 460,000 casualties on the Russian side so far in 3 years of war in Ukraine. This is absolutely astounding. I mean, it is so sad. And these are 460,000 of Russia's young men that they need to be making babies out there. Russia, this is, according to Peter Zeihan, this is the last war Russia will likely ever fight because they're not going to have any men left to fight wars. They're not having babies. They're in terminal demographic decline. They almost need to take over Ukraine specifically just for the 40 million people that Ukraine would bring to Russia's failing demographics. So McGregor has been wrong on almost everything. I remember when he was talking about, I heard him on Tucker Carlson's show back in 2022, November 2022, talking about the Ukrainian military is crumbling. It's about to completely collapse. And like 2 days later, the Russian military precipitously pulled out of Kherson and fled to the east side of the Dnieper River. And Ukrainian forces retook the city of Kherson. My daughter and I went down there and were there only a few days after it was retaken. We went into Russian bunkers, military bunkers that had just been evacuated, and they evacuated in such a hurry they left everything behind, including love letters from their sweethearts. And they were rat-infested, lice-infested holes that these guys were living in. You could tell without a doubt by looking at their fighting positions and the disarray with which they left that these troops were not disciplined, that they were not well equipped. We found first aid kits that had tourniquets and bandages in them from the 1950s. So McGregor was so wrong about that, and now he's saying that Israel is about to nuke Hezbollah. Well, as I've said for a long time, nuclear weapons in an age where everybody can have a nuclear weapon if they really, really want it, where a lot of countries have them, nuclear weapons do not function as an offensive weapon anymore. They only function as a deterrent. Nuclear weapons, if used in a first strike capability, will only guarantee the destruction of the state that uses them, if they're ever used as an offensive weapon. So I'm not making the case that Israel is not dumb enough to use, I'm sorry, not Israel, Iran. I'm not making the case that Iran is not dumb enough to use a nuclear weapon if they were able to get one. But I am making the case that if Iran managed to test a nuclear weapon, and they didn't test it directly on Tehran, because if they test it, they don't know if it's going to work. As Zihan said, these things are very precise instruments. But if they manage to make one and use it, Iran will be destroyed. And I don't think the Iranian leadership is stupid enough not to know that. They've got to know that. So I'm going to go back. I saw a few questions coming through here. Don't you think the use of nuclear weapons by Israel may have to do with the end times theology? If there is a nuclear war between Israel and anybody, it certainly will, it'll be the end of times for sure. Now, question, is Colonel McGregor serious or an effort of poor taste to get attention? I don't know. I mean, McGregor is very highly wedded to his political ideology. Like I said, he was even wedded to it when he was still active duty in the military, to the point where he was passed over a couple times for promotions because he was espousing this theory that Russia was going to win if we ever got into a conflict with them. That's been decisively proven wrong in the war in Ukraine. He built his reputation, though, on that assertion. McGregor built his career on the assertion that the United States would lose if we ever went to war with Russia. And, you know, admitting that you were wrong is a very, very difficult thing, especially if it's going to negate all of the things upon which you built your career. Now, it is possible. Now, there was another report back in April. If you recall, around the 1st of April, Iran attacked, or the first week of April, sometime in there, Iran attacked Israel with something like 300 rockets, missiles, and drones. There were no deaths in Israel. They were all shot down, many of them, except for a few. There was one injury of a little girl inside Israel. And that was it. Now, Israel retaliated in a very subdued way to that attack. They destroyed one anti-aircraft SA-300, SA-600, something like that. One anti-aircraft, anti-missile defense thing in Isfahan near an Iranian military base. Almost like they were just sending a message of what they could do if they wanted to. Personally, it's hard to fathom that Israel had that much restraint to only fire one missile back at Iran in response or retaliation for what Iran did. That was kind of hard to believe. But Israel has shown that kind of ability many times. If you remember back to the first Gulf War, when Saddam Hussein was firing Scud missiles at Israel over and over and over again on an almost daily basis. Israel almost never fired back. Israel showed very great restraint in that conflict. And when the day after Israel fired that one missile in response back in April, there's this Twitter account named Pepe Escobar. I don't know who this guy is, Pepe Escobar. He's got 180,000 followers, so it's not a small account. And he posted something. I'm going to just read it to you. The real story of the Israeli counter-response from a high-level intel source, he says, in Asia, not Russia, China. Although the strategic partnership, of course, exchanges at the highest levels 24/7, this has been confirmed and reconfirmed, he says. He says, Israel initially chose to respond with extreme force. An F-35 loaded with a nuclear bomb was sent east over Jordan. The mission, to cause a high-altitude detonation over Iran that would provoke a surge in the high-capacity power lines, crippling Iran's electric grid, as well as disabling all electronic devices. An EMP attack. However, as the Israeli F-35, this is this guy Pepe Escobar. As the Israeli F-35 was leaving Jordanian airspace, it was shot down by the Russian Air Force. Hence the publicized version of the Israeli counter-response. They decided, in the end, all sides decided not to publicize the real news to de-escalate what could well turn into World War III. Okay, now, let's see if this passes the smell test. This guy, Pepe Escobar, again, no idea who this joker is. He says that Israel sent an F-35 loaded with a nuclear bomb flying over Jordan. When the F-35 left Jordanian airspace, which would theoretically mean it was flying into Iraq or into Syria, most likely into Syria. then that F-35 was shot down by the Russians. Now, there's some things that don't add up here. First of all, the F-35 is probably the most advanced fighter bomber in history, in the world today, that exists. Russia, it would be very unlikely that Russia would have the kind of technology, especially in Syria, to shoot down an F-35. F-35 has stealth technology, and it's virtually impossible for Russian technology to shoot down or to even see it. So that's one thing. Secondly, it says it was loaded with a nuclear bomb that was going to cause a high altitude EMP over Iran to knock out the power grid. Well, an EMP is a real thing. That is not something that's out of the realm of possibility. However, in order to cause an EMP that would knock out the power grid, you have to detonate that nuclear bomb at about 100,000 feet minimum above the ground. The ceiling of an F-35 is like 15,000 feet. I'm sorry, 50,000 feet, not 15,000. 15,000 meters. It's about 50,000 feet. So you might have a problem there. And again, any use of a nuclear weapon by Israel is going to be seen as a massive escalation that's going to cause all the problems we talked about before. And so none of those things make any sense. But that seems to be what perhaps Douglas McGregor is referring to when he claims that Israel is looking to use a nuclear weapon against Iran and against Hezbollah. Hemmen says, would a tactical nuke even have fallout? Yes, it would. Now, it might be possible for Iran to create a nuclear dirty bomb just by taking nuclear material, putting it in a conventional bomb, and using that. But that would also trigger the kind of response, military, economic, and otherwise, from the world body that would likely crush Iran. Again, using a nuclear weapon only destroys your country. Maybe not only destroys it, but guarantees that your country, the one who uses the nuclear bomb, will be destroyed. If not literally, then at least economically, it will be destroyed. All right, let's go back over here. Yeah, Israel has Stendario 7 says F-22 is the plane that the U.S. won't let other countries have. That's correct. The F-35, Israel does have like 11 or 12 of those, something like that. Maybe they're trying to get more. There has been zero news of any F-35 being shot down of Israel. None of Israel's F-35s have been lost, as far as I know. Burcloud says the Iron Dome couldn't even stop a lousy 300 missiles from Iran. Actually, it did. Apparently, Burcloud doesn't understand how the Iron Dome is designed to work. The Iron Dome is not meant to shoot down every single rocket and missile that's fired at it. The Iron Dome is made up of several different weapon systems. They've got the Arrow, David Sling, They've got, Patriot missile batteries and others. And they're all networked together, and there's an AI system that can see incoming missiles, rockets, and drones, then makes a split-second decision as to where they will likely land. And if it looks like they're going to land in an area that's open area, like a farmer's field, or just, empty land, they just let it go. They don't use the Iron Dome to try to shoot it down. They just let it go. If it looks like it's going to land in a built-up area, then they attempt to shoot it down. And they have about 99% accuracy or effectiveness so far in this war. Of the rockets and missiles and drones that they've tried to shoot down, they have shot down almost all of them. They've had an almost flawless record. And so, yeah, they did get some help from the United States. They did get some help from Saudi Arabia. They even got some help from Jordan. A lot of the missiles that Iran fired at Israel never even made it out of Iran. They weren't in that great a shape. So they didn't all need to be shot down. Now, does that mean that they can handle a massive amount of fire if Hezbollah, for example, decided to fire thousands of missiles all at once? No, they don't have that many. But they have shown on October 7th and since then that they do have the ability to shoot down hundreds of rockets and missiles if need be. And they're very accurate. So there you go. Now, I'm not sure what your point is there, Burr. Burr Cloud is saying it took 5 countries to stop 300 rockets from Iran. Okay, what's your point? I'm not sure if Israel is the only other country with F-35s or not. That's a good question. It's something we could somebody could Google that and find out. Let's see here. Well, is the F-35 better than the F-22? Well, they have different roles. They're not the same. They're not meant to do the same thing. F-35 or F-22 is more, from what I understand, like signals, intelligence, jamming, electronic warfare stuff. F-35 is a fighter bomber. Pepe Escobar is Pablo Escobar's fruity brother. But Pepe Escobar is a respected geopolitical analyst. I think respected might be pushing it a little bit there, Burr, especially since we just absolutely crushed his assertion. Look, whenever I see an assertion like that, whenever I see somebody on Twitter who says, I have an exclusive breaking news, I just found out something that nobody else found out. Look, if this was true, this would be major news all over the planet. If it was true that Israel was about to nuke Iran with an EMP attack and their F-35 got shot down by Russia, if that was true, that would not be something they could hide. Israel is a far too transparent culture for them to be able to hide something like that. And the whole world would know about it. It would be front page news everywhere. So when you get a joker like this that goes on Twitter and starts putting up this kind of nonsense and things that are, very easy for us to just, we can debunk what he's saying without much difficulty at all. Well, I don't know that I would say this guy's a respected political analyst. Sounds like a political hack to me. With a question, with all our intelligence, do we really not know where Sinwar is? Apparently we don't. If we did, we probably would have shared that with Israel. At least I hope we would have. If it were to come out that the United States knew where Sinwar was and we were shielding him, when it would literally hasten the end of the war very much for Sinwar to be captured or killed, that would not be politically viable that would not be a good move for the Biden administration, would it? Probably not. Okay. So, we didn't know where Osama was either. Yeah, not for a long time we didn't. El Burian says he's either out of Gaza or not alive anymore. I think we can all speculate that he may have left Gaza, but I kind of don't think he did. Here's why. Would he be able to effectively lead the fighting in Gaza? He still has something like 5,000 or 6,000 Hamas fighters in Gaza. Do you think he would command a lot of respect from those 5,000 or 6,000 men if he left and then say, "Hey, I'm out. I'm out of here, guys. This is getting a little hot for me, but I'm going to leave, and you guys keep fighting." Yeah, he probably would not be able to command those troops very well from outside of Gaza. So I think he's still in Gaza somewhere. Just to give you a quick update on what's going on in Gaza, yesterday was a big day for Israel. They killed something like 35 terrorists in an operation in Rafah yesterday and killed another couple dozen in Gaza City in an operation. Now, mind you, Israel has pulled out almost all of its troops from Gaza. I mean, compared to what they had at the beginning. There are still a couple of brigades in Gaza fighting, and they're still fighting heavily. They're losing soldiers. I mean, it's full-on combat in there, but it's just not a 100% invasion like it was before. What they're trying to do is they're trying to, Eve Spark says Sinwar is underground tunnel in Egypt. I love how people make these assertions like they know what they're talking about. Like, oh yeah, I know for a fact Sinwar is underground in Egypt. Really? Maybe you should call the Egyptian military or the IDF or somebody and let them know that you've got that information. I think there's a big price on his head. They're offering a big reward. So, Eve, you could make some money. If you know that for sure and you know where he is, then let somebody know and you could probably get paid. Somebody whose name I can't pronounce says, do you feel the end of the war in Gaza is close? Well, that's a hard question to answer. It's closer than it was yesterday. Israel's going to have to come up with an ending to this war. But they are still, as a people, the majority of Israelis want Israel to prosecute this war until they destroy Hamas. Hamas is starting to make a few concessions, so they're still in talks to get some more of the hostages out. And of course, the Biden administration has been pushing this plan that they came up with, and they claimed it was an Israeli plan, even though the Israelis didn't know anything about it. And the Biden administration has been pushing the Israelis to accept this plan. And the Israelis have been saying, we're not accepting any plan that includes the end of the war before Hamas is gone. Right now, Hamas is saying the only thing we want out of this is for us to survive. So they've backed off a little bit from some of their demands. And the Hamas has come a little bit closer to making an agreement with Israel, but there's still some daylight between the two parties. And again, Hamas they keep, scaling it back and scaling it. Okay, maybe we don't need quite as many prisoners released. Maybe we don't necessarily need a written guarantee from Israel that they will stop fighting for good. We just need 6 weeks with no fighting. Hamas needs to regroup, and they're begging for an opportunity to do that. The Biden administration is playing right into their hands. And in the north, Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, has been saying, he gave a speech just recently where he was saying that, look, we are only attacking Israel because Israel is attacking Gaza. As soon as Israel stops attacking Gaza, we will stop attacking Israel. And I think he gave that speech because he said a couple different ways in the speech that he does not want Israel to go into Lebanon. They're trying to keep up the pressure on Israel, trying to pressure them militarily by attacking northern Israel with rockets and drones and missiles and ATGMs and everything else. They're trying to put that pressure on Israel to give Israel impetus to stop the war in Gaza. They're trying to pressure Israel to stop the war. Israel is saying we're not going to stop the war in Gaza until we achieve our objectives. In the process of the fighting that they're still doing in Gaza, Israel is making lots of strides at destroying Hamas infrastructure. They keep finding more and more weapons. Almost every single mission they do is against a UNRWA school, some other UN headquarters or something like that, a hospital or a mosque. And that's because those places are literally guaranteed to be being used by Hamas and PIJ. That is their strategy. Hamas's strategy was to use all of those things that are, not typically used in warfare to try to hide behind the civilian population. Hamas has got to be the most cowardly people group I've ever seen in my life. And so they just found, I saw on Telegram today, Israel just uncovered another UNRWA facility that had lots of weapons in it, lots of explosives, ammunition, missiles, tunnel entrances, all this kind of stuff. So they need to keep pushing, and it's profitable for Israel to do so, profitable in that they are continuously chipping away at Hamas's ability to fight them and to hurt Israelis. But they're not done yet. They have not achieved what they set out to achieve. And so they're going to have to keep doing it. They're going to have to keep going. Now, there was I think it's the defense minister, Gallant, was up on the northern border giving a speech to some of the troops yesterday. And he said, even if Hezbollah stops shooting missiles and rockets at us, we are still going to have to go in there and clean out the hotbed of Hezbollah south of the Litani River inside Lebanon. Them just stopping shooting at us is not going to be good enough for us now. So be prepared. We're going to have to go in there. And that could be just talk, but Hassan Nasrallah is apparently worried about this because he is making lots of noises like, hey, we really don't want to be fighting Israel, but all we're doing is we're just trying to keep the pressure on them to get them to stop shooting at people in Gaza. And as soon as Israel stops in Gaza, then we'll stop. We'll back down. Now, Jimmy the Jew from Philly, thank you for being a member. He says, do you think that Russia or North Korea will help Iran build and test the bomb to hide it from inspectors in the world? Well, for them to test it, they have to set one off. And there's really no place on planet Earth where they could set one off that we wouldn't know, because that stuff gets picked up on earthquake sensing seismic counters, whatever those are called. That we've got stations all over the planet and sensors everywhere. And if somebody sets off a nuclear bomb, even just testing it, we're going to know about it. The whole world will know. So it would be hard for Russia or North Korea to help Iran test the bomb. They might be able to help them build it, but they're not going to be able to test it without us knowing. One Tired Mama says, remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for doing that, One Tired Mama. I appreciate you. Yeah, it does help tremendously if you go hit the like button, and that shows YouTube that more people ought to see this content. We're trying to get the word out, trying to give you the ammunition you need to counter the lies that are being put out there every day, and there's a lot of them. So if there's a topic you would like to see me cover that I haven't covered in a while or haven't covered at all, send me an email at hotzoneholton@gmail.com. hotzoneholton@gmail.com, and I will cover that in one of my upcoming lives. We need to talk about immigration. I'm going to go this week and interview some government officials here in Panama City to talk about the immigration crisis going up to the United States southern border. There are still a ton of Chinese immigrants coming through the Darien Gap into Panama on their way to the United States. And we want to know why. My friend Oscar Blue Ramirez is here right now down in the Darien Gap interviewing Chinese migrants, talking to them about why they're coming. And so there's some very interesting things that we should be talking about. Let's see here. Question, could they know where Sinwar is but strategically let him live for now? It's possible, Susan, not likely. That is the holy grail for the Israelis right now, is to capture or kill Sinwar. And so they're going to do what they can to get him. And once they get him, they will have a much easier time pulling out of Gaza. But there's a lot of politics involved in that. And it's going to be a political decision, not a military decision when they pull out. I can make that assertion with clarity, without a doubt. Israel will not cease to exist. No, it won't. Yeah, I would say if you want to support me, don't do it on Patreon. I should just go close down Patreon. I don't want to support Patreon because Patreon supports Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all that kind of garbage. So I highly recommend that you do not use Patreon at all. I still have an account over there that I had open from a long time ago, and people find it on their own sometimes and go support me over there. But I should just go close it. If you're going to support me, please go to chuckholton.com, my locals page, and support me on locals. That helps keep me in the field. I will be here in Panama for the next couple of weeks, and then after going to my daughter's wedding in the end of July, I'll be headed back over to Israel for at least a month. And so for the time being, I'm going to be reporting from here in my studio in Panama. One Tired Mama says, what happened this morning in Ukraine? Russia attacked a children's hospital in Kyiv with a missile, killed something like 24 people that they have found so far. I've been to that children's hospital a couple times. It's not the first time that Russia has attacked that hospital. Russia attacks hospitals and schools all across Ukraine, partially because they're just evil and partially because Russian military doctrine says that hospitals and schools are where you should put your troops during a war because they're like a ready-made barracks. And so if Russia were at war in its own homeland, it would be putting its troops in hospitals and schools. And so it assumes that Ukraine is doing the same thing. And so it bombs all the hospitals and schools it can find. I've been to quite a few, actually, schools and hospitals across Ukraine that have been bombed by Russia. And unfortunately, they're usually just being used as hospitals. And the schools are closed, so there's not a lot of schools open in Ukraine. And can you imagine, they're going on 3 years without being able to send their kids to school. Not a cool thing. But One Tired Mama says, how is that not a war crime? Of course it's a war crime. It is a war crime. Russia just intentionally bombed the largest children's hospital in Ukraine and killed a bunch of kids. That is a war crime. But Russia doesn't care. And if Russia is willing to kill off 462,000 of its own troops, what would make you think that they would care about killing off a few Ukrainian kids? They don't. Okay, so they also bombed a bunch of other places across Ukraine. Russia has been using these glide bombs recently, and they're large bombs that are harder for Ukraine to counter. Ukraine's got so much territory to cover, it's very hard for them. They don't have enough air defense capability or anti-missile capability. So if you're not in Kyiv, you're actually at more risk. Kyiv, you'd think, oh, that's the capital. Yeah, but Kyiv has the largest percentage of anti-missile defenses of any city in Ukraine. But they don't have enough to cover everything. And apparently they didn't have enough to stop this bomb from being dropped on the children's hospital. It's really sad. It's really unfortunate. So, all right. Well, that's all I've got for today, folks. I've got a lot of work to get to. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you for watching and for commenting. Please, again, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Tell your friends about it. And if you want to support what we're doing, you can go to chuckholton.com and take a look at all the stuff. I mean, I'm putting up a lot of articles and photographs from the travels. And there was a young lady that some of you donated to help in Cartagena, Colombia. And you guys helped her graduate from high school. She just had her graduation and she sent some pictures. So I put those up over there today. So go check that out at chuckholton.com. And otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow and we'll have more to talk about. Love to hear from you. Take care. We'll see you next time.